Go live to the latest with the Queensland Premier.
About what that impact means, as well as a reflection on what's occurred. I've spoken about the four challenges: the waves, the winds, the rain and the flooding. Queenslanders will experience different impacts from that at different times, and it's important that we continue to share this update in a timely fashion to enable people to do so. We can do this calmly and clearly because we've done that preparation, and therefore we can respond swiftly as well. And so far, the way that Queenslanders have prepared has given us the best opportunity not just to deal with the event, but to be able to switch from response to recovery. And that's a really key part of it during the disaster event. Just some overnight observations. We've seen some wind gusts between 100 and 115 kilometres from Moreton Island through to Cape Byron. That is expected to increase in the hours ahead. As the system moves towards the coast, some of those increased winds will be felt indeed to Brisbane and to the north, but obviously those islands will be the first that continue to experience that. You've obviously seen images in overnight and in recent hours of fallen trees and the impact that's had on homes and cars. We do expect to see that continuing, and that has obviously made a big impact on the ability to provide electricity supply. Peter will be updating you shortly from from Energex, but that is important that we keep you updated on that. Regarding the storm tide flooding, which we've spoken about as one of those major challenges on the flooding front, the fact that the cyclone sat at slowed before it crossed the coast, and it didn't cross during this morning's high tide, was particularly good news for that storm surge from the tide. We've this morning convened a meeting, and we had representatives from all of the local governments, but including Gold Coast and Redlands, and we've got no reports this morning of storm tide inundation. That is really, really good news. It truly is. Now, there's another high tide this afternoon and a slightly larger one tomorrow morning, a slightly larger one than this afternoon. So we'll continue to watch that as the system approaches. But particularly good news, there was no inundation overnight. There were, however, some major waves, and we continue to see waves north of 10 metres off the coast. And indeed, some of the erosion that we've seen at Main Beach, there's some incredible images that have come through this morning, and it does show you the force in which those waves hit the coast. Turning to rainfall, some significant totals over the last 24 hours: 165 mils at Lower Springbrook, and these totals are to 10 a.m. To 9 a.m. In fact, we've only received them in the last couple of hours. 153 mils at Currumbin Creek, 102 mils at Nerang, 136 millimetres at Coolangatta, and 134 millimetres at Binnaburra. We are expecting some significant rainfall in the next 24 to 48 hours right across that system, and maybe even beyond. I really want to address that, and I want to address the significance of the potential for flooding. This system remains a very broad one, and often when we see tropical cyclones as they approach the coast, that band really does tighten. In this case, it is really large and slow moving, and that does represent the prospect of some significant rainfall over a long period of time. And that rainfall does bring the risk of river and creek flooding. But Queenslanders know how to deal with that, and that has been proven time and time again, and I have seen an incredible level of preparation. The way that people have responded, the way that they have done the little things around their property, we have seen people heed the advice about stocking up supplies. I really do have every confidence that whatever the rainfall challenges come upon us, that Queenslanders will be able to handle that across a really big section of the coast, and a heavily populated one at that. The flood watch across the impacted zone, we could see minor to major flooding, and the Bureau will update that. Okay, I just want to talk to a couple of our priority areas at the moment, and I'll start with power outages. Peter will update you shortly from Energex, but there are large parts of the population in the southeast without power, particularly some of those islands, and indeed in the Gold Coast area. The moment it is safe to do so, those crews will be hooking into action to reconnect we understand how important having electricity is at all times, but particularly after a disaster. When you're cleaning up and you need a good night's sleep, we understand that. 1,200 staff have been pre-positioned, and there are 800 Ergon staff at the other end of the state who are ready to return the favour to their mates down here from what we saw a few weeks ago. So all the preparation has been done, and I can assure Queenslanders the moment it is safe to do so, they will be on the ground reconnecting power to homes. And we'll keep updating you about the loss of power and as it's coming back on. We've had a couple of questions about water. There are 34 different water treatment plants in that area. All of them have been assessed and many of them have been fortified. And by that I mean all of the backup provisions, things like the possibility of needing power generation. We've done a full analysis about potential impacts on them. So we are in as best a position as possible to handle that, and I'm very confident in the ability to meet the water supply in the short and the long term. Telecommunications will be a challenge, of course. It always is in an event. As part of our regular meetings, we do have representatives from the telcos there. Now, they have pre-positioned generators as well, following our discussions earlier in the week, and they will do everything they can to try to make sure that as the backup generation does come offline, that can be reconnected. What we'll do, having done the work in working with them to make sure that was in place, our role will be to make sure that we work with councils to door knock in those areas. If we need to get messages out to a part of the community that isn't covered by telecommunications, if those systems do go down, we will have people going door to door to deliver a message. Now, as we speak, we're assured that those things are still in place, but we'll update Queenslanders as it comes, and if that is needed, we will ramp into gear. There are 28 refuge centres that have been advertised and are online, and we're very grateful to the local governments for doing that. They are there as a last resort for people who need it, but they are there, and we ask Queenslanders to stay up to date, have an evacuation plan, but overwhelmingly we have seen the way that local government has prepared that. We're very grateful. If you want information on that, disaster.qld.gov.au, so that's the disaster website, disaster.qld.gov.au. All of the local government's dashboards are there. They also have all the mapping for floods, and we thank them very much for it. Turning to aged care, there has been some preemptive reallocation of some residents, but overall there's no reported evacuations of aged care. We have assessed all of those potential vulnerable residents. There are plans in place if they are required to be relocated. Our preference always is to try to care for them on site, but all those plans have been put in place, and we continue to update those residents and you on that. Hospitals. Virtual healthcare services, which are available 24/7, have been stepped up. Whilst we aren't having elective surgeries at the moment, those emergency departments are there, and they are there for people who need help in an emergency. There's even the ability for some of those health staff to be accommodated there if required, to make sure that we can keep those key medical facilities open, and we are very grateful for the fact that health service providers would be willing to do that and come into work at a time when they also have friends and family that they would love to be with as well. So we're deeply grateful for that. Public transport will continue to be closed today. So we will announce that all public transport will be closed tomorrow from Noosa to the border. And as we do with schools, we will make the announcement the day before to give people the opportunity to be able to plan, but we will also continue to make sure that wherever it's possible to be able to bring things back on, we obviously will. Now, we are expecting some serious rainfall, as I've outlined, but we'll be back multiple times, and we'll continue to give people as much notice as we can in that. Supermarkets, they are operating on a case-by-case basis. That is their decision, and we're continuing to give them the information, and there are some that remain open. Their challenge will be balancing being able to get their staff there and make sure that they have things like power and they manage their impacts. As we continue to say, we are most grateful for people who are working in those frontline roles at a time that we desperately need it. And we will continue to work with the supermarkets to stay open for as long as they can and then get back on their feet as quickly as they can. And we are most keen to ensure that life can go back to normal after the event, and they are a key part of it. Turning to schools, there are 1,049 schools that are closed today in the impact zone. 2,081 early childhood centres are closed. We will be making an announcement on Monday, the day before, on Sunday, to give people the opportunity to plan, and most importantly to ensure that we don't do it in the morning and cause confusion. So it'll be the day before, and that will apply to Sunday as well. A couple of messages. Firstly, one of gratitude to every person who has worked around the clock to prepare and give us the best response to be able to deal with things in a calm and measured way, but also in a swift way. Thank you very much for whatever agency you are. To Queenslanders, I know this is an unusual event. It's been a long time since a cyclone crossed the coast this far south, but the way that people have treated this has been, quite frankly, remarkable. The vast majority of people have done the right thing. And my view is, if you give people the information, humans rally in times of crisis, and people really, really have. My message to the people at the other end of the state: thanks for your good wishes. You went through a pretty big event within the last month, and yet you've been reaching out to your fellow Queenslanders. Your recovery continues in earnest, and we'll make sure that job is done and done properly. And finally, in events like this, there are always little moments of magic, and overnight, a set of twins were born on Dunwich Island, and on the island. And we had paramedics and midwives who assisted the mum, and they continued to care for her, and that's one of those little gems in an otherwise really, really stressful time for everybody. Thanks very much.